ordinance relating to the affordable housing and all the other things which has been in process. I think you have been prompted by the storm events of the earlier this year and the presentations, the drone pictures, etc., to take action in two worlds. In the world of limiting erosion and the subsequent sediment transport into the waterways of the county, and more so also the limiting of the limit of disturbance. You know, like how much earth do we open up at any given time for any given project? So to that effect, you looked at, you had a presentation from originally the Conservation District, then by the Engineering Department, with follow-ups in between. You gave us some clear instructions which items you felt were important. You want to definitely pursue. You gave us instructions which items to put in the parking lot for the time being. So in the end, you had two desires to draft ordinances. One was on the technical items, and then sort of on a later stage, and I think Commissioner McCarran said it best, the enforcement items. Let's see what happens if we put the technical items in place. Is enforcement even needed down the line? So having given that, so when we got the instruction, proceed with the ordinance on that. Mr. Robertson and I worked on this together, and we came up with the ordinance before you today. And there were some feedback, and you've seen a letter from the Conservation District. Commissioner McCarran certainly saw that. He's been at the presentation at the district, and also the comments again this morning from the administrator for the Conservation District, supporting our efforts and pointing out some, let's say, reference issue Mr. Robertson and I had. So we corrected that, and Clerk of Council is aware of this. But I also wanted to point out before we do the introduction, before you possibly do the introduction, just a couple of things, why the timelines are the way they are, and how they tie to the first one is the ordinance references when it comes to the enhanced sediment capture, an underlying algorithm which is, let's say, it is run within the engineering department, but it's strictly run based on input from the applicants. And when this input is provided, you see these are the input parameters here up top. There's the slope over a certain given distance. There is the upstream drainage area, and there's the distance to the tidal waters. And we all individually and as a unit talked about this criticality of these parameters. So there's several formulas work behind this, and they're tied to weighting factors. There's a calculation of a deciding, and all these things come together in a decision of what the overall score for that site should be. Now, that happens, and keep in mind, that will happen at the very, very early piece of the process. There's no layout, there's a site. We know somebody owns a site, they're willing and interested in developing the site, and they're scheduling this, what's called preliminary conference with our planning director. And at that preliminary conference, a number of things get conveyed from the planning side, such as setbacks, zoning, site requirements, interactions with the agencies, but also from the engineering department. And they have to do with sewer availability, which we actually clarified in the ordinance in by adding some definitions for the concept evaluation and also some language to the preliminary conference, but also in terms of should that site be considered for enhanced capture or not. And I think especially Commissioner Lloyd and I discussed how often would that happen in Western Sussex? I spent a good bit of time looking at various sites there, potential, just looking at the site, looking at the data, I can see the metadata, plugging it in. Other than the dry wreck pieces adjoining to the lower parts of the nanocode, nothing west of 113 rises to the level that it would trigger that value. So that is sort of like, as you can see, how the topography is different on the natural features on the east side versus the mostly tack stitch type features on the west side. And when you go back really west and you go into the natural features along the lower parts of the nanocode again, that's when you see similar things what you see over there on the east side. So, but again, the key thing here is the timing. This information gets entered at the very, very early stages of the process and conveyed to the applicant. So if it is required, then that can be worked into the design process. So there's no time lost, no money expended, other than, hey, you're picking a specific practice. So, and that is then related to the applicant in that preliminary conference. So when you fast forward, the second thing we have now that we're further into the process, when you're further in the process and you're looking at, should we be considering a reduction in the limit of disturbance? That means at this point we have a plan, we have a design, we're looking at the individual detailed grading plan which deals with different phases of the subdivision. When you reach this stage, you know what the proposed slopes will be, and these are bare earth slopes. These are slopes as you grade the site, this is what it would look like. So there's two critical things. How steep are the slopes, and how big is the catchment area upstream? So based on that, we sort of divided the table 1 into 2 trigger areas. 1, slopes of less than 3. Western Sussex, by the way, slopes are way lower than 3. So, and then the higher slopes. So when you look at both, we will then be able to convey this to the applicant in the design process. And at that point, that's when you record a phasing plan. So now we know we have to limit the phases based on these input parameters. That is part of the ordinance. That is actually in code. That table will be in code. The way you see it here, that's how it goes to public hearing if you introduce it.
Who comes up with that elevation data?
We can see it when the applicant comes in, when the elevation comes in.
Is that from all those GPS base stations we talked about?
No, this would be actually on the detailed grading plan.
Okay,
yes.
I got you.
No. So these are the two triggers. The third one you authorized was the buffers, and we all understand there is two buffer zones: buffer zone A, buffer zone B, based on the various distances we have. They have tables in the code already. So before, we did not allow the averaging of zone B beyond 50% and did not allow the concentration of it in critical areas for runoff. You've seen the examples, you've seen the benefits. That's in the ordinance. Here's your 3 legs. Buffer concentration, catchment area limitation, or limit of disturbance limitations, and last not least, improving the sediment catchment. So they're different in time. When you remember, we talked about we're telling you what catchment what practice to use for the better catchment, enhanced catchment. The same thing would be for the buffering. At the preliminary conference, the engineering department would tell you this is what's needed for the buffering. It will apply. We tell you where it goes. So again, no effort has been expended because this conference happens at the very first step. By the way, it is months, if not a year, ahead of the conference, the pre-application conference the district holds. So these things, they happen to have preliminary in the title and pre, but they're timeline-wise months apart. So that's important, and we clarified that with the district, and so everybody now knows how the timelines work and where the input happens.
So Hans, who determines those catching methods? Like there's several different ones we talked about.
Yes, there's several different ones. As you know, the regulations, the DNREC regulations, allow 7 different ones. 3 of them work for the enhanced capture. So as we see the site specifics, the input data on the top,
Right, yeah.
that's when we, the engineering department, would look at it and say, okay, wet pond will work best for this particular.
Oh, I see.
That's when we tell them, hey, for this particular proposed subdivision, we want enhanced capture, and we will say you will use wet pond in your design. So it doesn't change how you design a wet pond. It doesn't change any of the DENREG regulation.
Right.
It only changes. We tell you that's what you need to use, and we will use, and you have to have it in place when you have bare earth, and you have to route your bare earth runoff into the practice.
And that's our engineering department that determines that?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Here we go.
I'm glad you did it.
If you're ready, I'm ready if you're ready.
I've talked somewhat to the Conservation District, and I know you've had conversations with them. Sounds like you're tracking on the same page. The only question was, in my mind, who enforces this? Do they, or do you, or county?
Let's stay with this one here.
Okay.
We made, and that's the big we. Engineering department looks at the site. The data supports enhanced catchment. We say wet ponds required. We tell them right up front. We communicate that it's in the code. We communicate with the district. An application comes in for that site, and it has infiltration. So both the applicant, the engineer of the applicant, and the district know you are supposed to use wet pond. So the review comment back to the applicant would be one line: wrong practice, try again. So here's your enforcement. So it is a clear-cut. The enforcement of the design of the design review remains where it is, because the district is the delegated agency. However, if the design comes in incorrectly based on the county's right to make a selection, they will automatically reject it. Now, I cannot imagine you're going to be that stupid, let's put it this way, and ignore the county's law and make a submission which is not based in our ordinance. But I went through this with David last week and yesterday. Yes, if you're that stupid, applicant, you will be hit over the head.
So it sounds like a shared responsibility.
No, it's not.
It's us.
No, it's on this here. We enforce our law, our ordinance enforces the selection of the practice.
Okay.
The design review authority still will remain with the district, as it always has. So if the applicant chooses to ignore the county, all the district does is refer them back to us.
Okay, all right.
So if you want to look at the enforcement of the limit of disturbance, right? Mm-hmm. We review the detailed grading plans.
Right.
We record the phasing plans. We enforce that. So if a design comes in and we determine the phasing plan must have a lower limit of disturbance, i.e. be less than 20 acres per phase, that is enforcement with us and only with us, because the district does not have that authority.
Okay.
So yes, we discussed both of these.
Yeah, okay.
Like Councilman Riley, certainly I've had conversations with the Conservation District, and in my position I have to rely on the content experts such as yourself in the engineering department and our friends at the Sussex Conservation District. And at the county level, we've enjoyed a great working relationship with the Sussex Conservation District, and I appreciate the efforts of yourself and the county staff, and I look forward to hearing from the Sussex Conservation District, ensuring this proposed ordinance is agreeable to the district and has their full support. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so this just needs to be introduced, right?
Just have one member introduce it, and
Okay.
we'll get the public hearing scheduled.
Anyone want to introduce it?
I'll introduce.
Okay.
We all introduce it.
We're in,
Everybody.
there are
jumping
4
in.
introductions here.
Ms.
You're-
Kerner-Bauman,
you're-
please introduce.
You're jumping ahead of yourself. No one has read the ordinance yet, have they?
Everybody wants to introduce
We would like the short title.
You go ahead.
Yes, please read the short title.
Yes.
I will read it. I have to participate somehow this morning in this. An ordinance to amend chapters 90, section 90-3, 90-6, and to add new section 90-8, 90-9, and 90-10. Chapter 99, articles 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6, sections 99-5, 99-7, 99-9, 99-23, 99-26, and 99-29. Chapter 110, Articles 1 and 3, Sections 110-1 and 110-12, and Chapter 115, Articles 1 and 25, Section 115-4 and 115-193 of the Code of Sussex County regarding sediment releases and sediment control and stormwater management.
That's all you got?
I was writing those down.
Ms. Kerner-Bauman, do you still want to introduce it?
I do, yes, sir.
Okay.
With all its complexity.
Ms. Kerner-Bauman introduces it.
And for everybody's benefit who may be watching, because it touches on 99 and 115, it will go to Planning and Zoning and County Council for public hearing.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up, old business.